Hi everyone, welcome. Hope everyone is having a great Thursday. Welcome to today's webinar, Datagrid from Data to Insight, where we'll be talking about, surprise, surprise, our Datagrid. My name is Barbara. I'm the Customer Success Manager here in GIS Cloud, which means I do lots of support, educational content, workflow consultations, product guides, etc. Unfortunately, this was supposed to be a team effort today, but Boyan couldn't make it, so you'll just have to listen to my voice a bit more. If you do want to hear Boyan, make sure to check out some of our recent videos that are on the blog. So you'll be able to hear him there, and of course on future webinars as well. We're holding this over Zoom. Zoom does have a chat and Q&A section, so please feel free to send any questions if you have them. We will have a dedicated Q&A section at the end, but feel free to jump in the meantime if anything comes to mind. As mentioned, today we'll be talking about the data grid. So earlier this year, we've made some significant changes to the original data grid that made it a lot more useful and user-friendly. And sometimes we talk a bit more about the business side of things in webinars, about workflows, things like that. But today it will be a bit more educational. I'll show you some best practices that you can take and implement into your maps and projects when it comes to working with the data grid and essentially how to use it. So if you've been here for a while, you'll probably remember the data grid looking a bit more like this. So pretty functional, but obviously there's a lot more potential to it. Data grid is really essentially your attribute table. So it's a fundamental part of your GIS toolbox, as that's where all of the data that you have on the map is located. That's where you can see everything. It just lets you view the data from the map layer in a table format, which is, of course, sometimes a lot more useful. It helps you navigate it a bit more clearly. I do think that the map is the best way to understand the data and display it, but it does have some limitations, of course. If you have, let's say, a lot of information, different information related to specific features on the map, it's really not practical to show everything on the map through classification. So it would make the map maybe a bit messy because showing different characteristics or attributes on the map is really done through that classification. You can even see it here on this screenshot where we have like different colors and icons. But if you were to take all the information and try to put it on the map, that would be a bit cluttered. You probably need a lot of different classes, potentially different layers. So it's always good to have another option to filter through the data. So for example, if we use the power stations here on our screenshot, if you want to display both the station name and the state and maybe the type and what's the status of the power station, who's the operator, what's the fuel type, what's the capacity, things like that. So there's not really a good way to show everything on the map, except with a lot of different layers. Since we're talking about always a single layer, as I mentioned, there's always a need for additional ways to filter through the data and to search through it. And our data grid does just that. So what did we do to the data grid to make these queries simpler? So what's new that you should know about and learn how to use? Well, quite a few things. We have some new filters set up. Previously, you were able to filter through single data grid or actually attribute columns. You weren't able to then kind of combine multiple different values within it, and it was not as user-friendly as it is now. This new filtering option allows you to quickly search through your data sets, and it also defines what's visible on the map. So of course, we'll go through all of these in like a live demo so that you can see everything in action, but just to kind of go through these things at the start. Of course, you can combine multiple attribute values, because you can see here, and make even combine multiple attribute fields to make things very specific. You can also filter based on time a bit more efficiently, as that can be quite useful. For example, if you're working with some kind of maybe sales teams and you want to see their efforts during the first, second, third quarter, etc., that can be quite useful to do. So once you have filtered your data, you can then save your results as a custom view. What's even better is that you can then open multiple saved views in these different tabs, as you can see them here, and then easily switch between them. Now, the best part is that these tabs also change what's visible on the map. So you're not just filtering through a large Excel spreadsheet, you're also filtering on the map as well, which is kind of the whole point and the goal why we're not displaying everything on the map through different classes. Saved views, so saved views will change what's visible on the map. Once you filter any of your data, whether that's through a view or through just selections, you can also export your data and create different reports, which is slightly different than what was possible before, because you were only able to export the whole layer and not just parts of it. This makes it a lot more user-friendly because you're not constantly having to create new layers based on filters. This way you filter out a certain class and you can export everything, create a report, so save some time when creating these types of analysis. The new Datagrid also includes a settings option that allows you to customize what's actually visible in the Datagrid, because of course, if you have a lot of different attribute columns, you might not need all of them. You might have different aliases that you want to set for them. So this makes it a lot simpler to set up because it's available for other users as well, and not just for you as the main user. So previously you were able to do some of these things through the layer properties, but now you can do a lot more without those additional permissions that you need to set for the user, because they won't be able to do this permanently for everyone else. So you still have the base layer set up. But enough of the presentation. I think it's always best to learn and to see what can be done in real life. So let's go ahead and I'll switch over to our map editor to show you how things are done. Before we actually move on to our new data grid, I did just want to kind of briefly also show the old one. You can see it's functional, but the filtering is not as user-friendly as it can be. And of course, we did want to make this a lot more useful than it was at that point. You can still use the old one if you would prefer it, but there's definitely a lot of benefits to the new one that I think would be quite useful for everyone. So let's take a look. Datagrid is available in all of the applications, the default ones. If you do want to add it to your custom application, you can do that as well. But it's worth noting that it's always best to work with it on a simple application, because since customization can do a lot of different things, the simpler the application, the better. Of course, it works perfectly fine in all of our standard applications, map editor, map viewer, map portal, whichever you have set up, you can use the data grid over there. So we can access it by clicking on our data button below, and you can see, first of all, of course, it's quite different from a user interface perspective, but for me, the best part is that we have the infinite scroll right now. So there's no more pages, everything gets loaded, so you can just scroll and see all of your data. It doesn't matter how much data there is, it just keeps scrolling. So let's take a look and see what else we can do with our data sets. So here I have a map with some different infrastructure that you might be working with. Of course, everything that I will be showing you today works with any kind of use case that you are working with. This is just an example to show you what you might use it for and how to use our different filters. So let's take a look. So we have our map with different cell towers and radio towers. And of course, some of the information that's connected to it might be related to whoever owns the license for a certain cell tower, what the location is, what the, let's say, state it is, what the city it is where this is located, what kind of structure is it, etc. So let's say that we want to filter our data based on the licensee, so whoever is kind of responsible for a certain cell tower. We can easily do that because we have a certain column field that gives us that information, and right now it's just visible for all things. We can kind of order it based on the alphabet, of course, or what's easiest is we can create different filters to easily then switch between those items. I'll turn off the radio towers for just a second so that you only see the cell towers. And I already have an example here. So for example, we can filter based on all the Verizon cell towers. You can see that right away, the filtering in the data grid reflects on the filtering in the map as well, so that you can easily see Verizon has cell towers in the southeast and towards the west of Massachusetts, while the rest is apparently reserved for different carriers. So let's see how we set up this filter, how we set up this view, and what else we can do with it. So let's go ahead and create a new view, and we can do that by clicking on this plus button. And if you have any previously saved views, they will be visible here as well. But we'll go ahead and click on New View. And you can see again, we have all of the cell towers back on the map because we still haven't defined our filters yet. So how do we do that? So we know that licensee is the attribute column that we want to filter based on. Of course, one option would be to create different classes through icons, but in this case, maybe there are hundreds of different licensees, or even if you want to combine different attribute fields, that would be a bit messy. So we'll go ahead and do that through the data grid instead, so that it's easier for us to switch between different licensees, and it also allows us to add more information into those filters themselves. So in the data grid, we have a little filter button that allows us to create different filters based on the data that's in the layer itself. When we're creating these filters, we can select what the columns are that we're using, and we can add additional expressions or expression groups to our filter. In our case, we're going to filter all the AT&T cell towers. And if I look at my data grid here, I can see that I have two different types of AT&T licensees. So there are a couple of options that I can do. Let me just scroll to the other one. There we go. So we have two different ones, as you can see here. So there are a few options we can filter out this data, but maybe the simplest one would be to create an expression group where we filter, so licensee, and then we select the condition. In our case, this is a text field, so it's asking us to define different operators. We can use contains, does not contain, equal to, of course, depending on what kind of data you're working with. What I'll choose in this case is licensee is equal to AT&T Mobility LLC. And then I'll add one more expression that says licensee is equal to AT&T Mobility Spectrum LLC. So that's one very simple filter. We could have set up the filter as well to say contains AT&T, which would work just the same. This is maybe a more complex one if you would like to also include some additional ones into the mix. Of course, both would work. Let's go ahead and apply this. Of course, one mistake we did here is select or. So either or because it cannot be both. So let's go ahead and click apply. And there you go. So now we have all of the, zoom out a bit, zoom out to Massachusetts. These are all the AT&T cell towers. At the bottom, you can also see how many total records there are. If we switch to Verizon, you can see there's 28 of those, and AT&T has 162. Of course, this doesn't make sense to just create a new view without other users being able to access it as well. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and save this view by clicking on save and just renaming this AT&T. Great. So now as we switch between different views, Verizon, AT&T, and all the cell towers, we can easily check where the cell towers for different licensees are located, which can help us with maybe our coverage maps or things like that. We can even then, with our saved views, we can rename them, we can duplicate them, we can delete them if we need to. So let's go ahead and see how we can maybe add more information into our filters. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this view. And I'll add one more filter here. In this case, I'll just add one expression. And I'll say that I want to filter all the AT&T cell towers within a certain county. So I'll go ahead and say location county is equal to Plymouth. There we go. So now they're located here. And I can go ahead and rename this view and save our changes. So now only certain cell towers are visible. And you can see we've combined different expression groups and single expressions here in order to be able to combine these and or operators more effectively. In this case, for this, we do need to use expression groups because it wouldn't work with singular expressions when we're combining these operators. Okay, great. Now that you've filtered your data, you can also very easily export the data, just partial data from a layer, because of course, the whole layer, it contains 250 different features, whereas maybe you want to create a report for just a single cell tower licensee in a certain county. In that case, we can simply create a filter and export just the filter itself, just the data from the filter. There we go. And we create a CSV file based on this information, or again, we could create a report based on the same data set. You can have as many of these custom views as you'd like. It's very easy to turn them off if you maybe have too many of them, because you can always go back and open the views that you saved. And these views are also then visible to other users who have access to your map, so that they can very easily search through the data as well. So that means if you're sharing your map with your colleagues, with maybe different departments, you can all work on the same map and create additional views for each maybe department, because not everyone will need the same information, of course. So how do we open our views? We simply click on the plus button again, where we can search through all of the saved views that we have. If you have a lot, you also have this search available, and just click on the view to open it. Okay, so we've seen how the search works with the text fields, but of course, we might have some information that's connected to numerical values. So let's go ahead and see how we can filter those on our radio towers layer. In our case, one of the information that is available for our radio towers is the frequency that they're working on. And we can easily filter, let's say, all the frequencies between 100 and 101. So for all of these different types of queries and filters, of course, it's important to know what kind of data type you're working with. You can always check that in your layer properties as well. In the attributes, you can see what kind of type it is. So string is always text, some kind of, and real and integer are your numerical values. In our case, our frequencies are numerical values. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. Again, we're clicking on the filter button and choosing our frequency field. And then we have different options to choose from. Of course, previously we had equal to and contains. Here we have equal to and greater or less than. In our case, we want frequencies that are over 100 and frequencies that are less than 101. There we go. So these are all of the cell towers with those frequencies, just 9 of those. If we zoom in a bit further, we'll see more of them because, of course, some of these might be 2 cell towers close together. We can go ahead and we can save this as well. And we can repeat this step, of course, with all the other frequencies that we want to. So pretty simple, pretty quick to set up. And of course, you can then combine multiple layers here on the map to show, let's say, cell towers for AT&T, or maybe AT&T Plymouth, and radio towers that only have these frequencies. Let's go ahead and let's also see how we can filter some other items as well, because apart from text fields and numerical values, we could also have dates, which of course can help with maybe different filtering different quarters or what's been going on in certain months, etc. So we'll turn off the layers below and we'll turn on our Boston layers because we have here information regarding some potholes and roadworks. So let's take a look at those. When it comes to filtering through with dates, it's important to note that they do need to be in a certain format, but that's, in this case, it's already been set up. When we're filtering based on dates, we have here our, let's say, open date. And then we do have a calendar that we can search through. You can either input these values manually, you can select start and end dates in the calendar by yourself, or we could say, we could maybe search for different potholes where the work has started during last month. So these are a few items that you can choose to kind of speed up the process. If you're maybe creating different filters based on each month, you can easily use these tools to do that. Okay. So maybe we don't have these for the open date, but let's use start date in that case. Oh, I see that I'm on our wrong layer. So instead of our potholes, we have roadworks that started last month. Let's go ahead and let's click apply. And yeah, so we do have some roadworks that started last month. Let's take a look and see where they are. We have to zoom in a bit to actually see them. We can go ahead and we can save this view. On and off. Let's maybe switch over here and let's see where our data is. Okay, these are not visible for some reason, so let me just go ahead and do a bit of layer reinitialization. Yeah, there we go. All done now. We can zoom in a bit further to see the rest of them. There we go. So yeah, of course, you can make a lot more complex filters, not just based on dates, not just based on numerical and text values. You can combine them to very easily then share with other users. Since, as I mentioned, these are always visible to other users who have access to your map and your data grid as well. Okay, maybe let's do one more filter on our potholes over here. Let's see how many of them are overdue. So we have here our on-time status. It's equal to overdue. There we go. So we have 3,000 of those. Of course, the data grid doesn't just allow you to filter through the data. What you can also do is customize what's actually visible in the data grid. You can see for most of these layers, we have a lot of different attribute columns. In some cases, we might not need to view all of them. We might want to maybe hide certain columns, or certain columns might have some kind of a column name that is not as easily understandable to all users. So that's why we have here the customize options, where we can hide or display certain fields, and we can rename these as well. So for example, we don't need to display the coordinates, so we can go ahead and hide those by just clicking on the eye icon, and maybe our status can be called just the status, not the case status. Okay, and again, just refresh our data grid, and we can see, so our coordinates are hidden and our status has changed name. So you can easily take this with any kind of data that you have and work, create as many filters as you need to, turn them on and off, and of course, share with other users. Pretty simple, pretty quick. Hope you'll definitely use some of these tools for yourself and explore different filters that you can create. So right now, I think would be a good time to see if we maybe have some kind of questions from the audience. If there's anything that you are maybe would maybe like to know a bit more about, or maybe some additional questions on the functions of the data grid. While we wait, I know that usually a very common question is whether it's possible to filter through multiple layers through the data grid. And no, the answer is not currently. So you can only filter based on information that's within that single layer. If you do want to filter through multiple layers, we do have an analysis tool that's called spatial selection that then allows you to do that. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely check out our guide for that. Let me see the question. I can't seem to see the custom filters in the viewer. Is it because it's using the old grid? Yeah, so if you have the old data grid that looks like this, there are no filters like that. You do need to switch over to the new data grid. If you're working with a custom application, then the old data grid is set up by default. So you do have to enable the new data grid within your custom application. There is a custom app option that you can use for that. It's called I think just Datagrid, if I'm not mistaken. But definitely check out our manual. There's a full list of all the app options, and one of those is to switch over to the new data grid. Do keep in mind that if you're using the filters I don't have it set up for this map. If you have filters set up in things like a map portal, then it's best to use the old data grid. So it's the new data grid and the filters are separate items that should not mix. But yeah, try out the app option. I can send you a link after our webinar if you like, where you can find the answer to that. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. No, pretty clear. Well, yeah, so the data grid is quite simple to use, and that's kind of the whole point. You can always, of course, try it out. Make sure that you check out our guide. We do have a lot of examples on how to use it, how to use expression groups, how to use single expressions, and how to combine them. So that's always a good place to start. One thing that I didn't mention is you can also expand the data grid to the whole screen. So if you have a lot of data that you need to filter through, that's always a good option, just to hide the map temporarily. And of course, all the other features that were available in the old data grid, such as editing the features, deleting features, things like that, they are available in this data grid as well. And apart from just filtering and creating new views based on those filters, you are able to just click on certain features themselves and then create a view from that selection. So you don't necessarily have to create create the filter through the filter builder. You can easily just select a few things on the map or select a few things in the data grid and then create a view from that. So yeah, that definitely saves you some time as well. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, this was quite a short webinar, but of course, the data grid is short and sweet. Oh, actually, there are some new questions. So how do clients get access to portal? You have to share your portal with other users. So if it's a public portal, you just send them a link. If it's a private application, you do have to also add users to the private application. Well, since we're here, I can actually show you. So for all custom apps, you can go ahead and click on users here and then add the users, add users that you want to share your application with, and then they should have access to your application as long as they have relevant access to the base application. So if it's a custom map viewer, they should have access to the general map viewer, and that's it. If you want to send us an email, I can also send you a guide as well. Here's my email that you can see here on the right. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Okay, yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. If you do have any additional questions on the data grid, or if there's anything else you would like to learn more about, feel free to reach out to us either through our direct emails, or you can always reach out to our support or through our chat box on any of our applications. We would love to hear more about what kind of webinars you would like to see, what things are of interest to you. So feel free to reach out with suggestions. Thank you again for joining this webinar. Hope you learned some more about the data grid. Hope you'll try to use it on your own and with your data sets. And yeah, have a great rest of your day and see you in our next webinar. Bye, everyone.